All right, welcome in. Here we are tonight, Longhorn Livestream on a Wednesday. There's Rod Babers, CJ Vogel, and Hamilton. We are ready to roll tonight, Rod Babers. 10 days out from the start of the season. Vince Young days out.
Happy VY Day to everybody out there in all Texas football. Everybody out there, we appreciate everybody joining us. A lot of stuff to get to on the show. There is some news, kind of a downer. We'll get into the Michael Fasusi news. We'll get into that. We'll also, of course, dive into this mock draft that's on ESPN right now. There's some Longhorn love, but also I think there's a reality check for Longhorns too about the talent that you're going to be facing on that schedule based on that latest mock draft. We'll get into that. We also have the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl released their annual watch list, and they have a lot of Longhorns that are getting a lot of attention on that watch list. So we'll talk about that. Also, we'll go over the opponents the Longhorns are going to face and how many players they have on the recent Senior Bowl watch list. So we'll get into a few topics on the show. But, of course, always the show is dedicated to you guys and what you want to talk about. You can drive the show any which way you want to. Super chats, jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. Also, we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can. So appreciate y'all and your participation in the show. Wherever you're joining us from, we appreciate you being part of the On Texas football family. All right, gentlemen, I say we start with, kind of the downer, if you will, the downer of the day, which was Longhorn fans' disappointment that they did not get the Fasusi commitment. And not only the disappointment of not getting the commitment from a five-star tackle, but also him going to a hated rival in Oklahoma. So, gentlemen, I'll open the floor up to you, Jerry. What are your thoughts about it?
Look, Fasusi was going, if he didn't go to Texas, he was going to Oklahoma or A&M. He visited Missouri, never visited Oregon. He was staying close to home. So this was going to go one of three ways, and it was going to go the way of Oklahoma, Texas, or Texas A&M. And I think it finished in that order, honestly. Look, I mean, you're not going to get everybody. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Texas has Nick Brooks is going to announce on Friday. We'll see if Texas lead holds there over Georgia and USC. I think Texas has been a really good place there. Then on Saturday, a five-star Jonah Williams, who's set to announce his decision. I think that'll be Texas or LSU. I think Texas has been trending there. So, I mean, look, you're not going to get them all. That one stings, I think, for Texas fans, because the ones that sting the most in recruiting I've found over the years are the guys who were really good at a younger age, who you continuously hear about for year after year, month after month, day after day, right? You've heard about those guys the longest. And so those guys tend to have more of a popularity amongst fans, whether they end up being the best player or not at their position. That's all up to these kids. At the end of the day, they have to go maximize their talent. But look, I mean, it's an interesting recruitment. I think Oklahoma, the ability to go in and potentially play right away was big for Michael Fasusi. And I say potentially because, look, I like that kids have goals. I love that he has that goal. I was at Louisville High last week. He's still in his very young as a football player. He's a 17-year-old guy, won't turn 18 for a while. So he's going to enroll early at Oklahoma as a pretty young kid to play on the offensive line that didn't really grow up playing football. He's committed today. This is the 5th anniversary of his family moving to the States. I think he's going into his 4th year playing football. So pretty young in the game, but a lot of talent. And hopefully Michael goes on and maximizes his talent. But look, the recruiting process doesn't end until these guys are signed. I think this one's pretty locked in for Oklahoma, but you never know. So you have to see how the season goes and see where things stand at the end of the day. But obviously one thing we know with Sark, they don't just walk away from their 1A targets. I think there was a question here that I was going to piggyback off of that. Hi, I'm Boo Corrigan. Hello, Boo. Jerry said with Fasusi going to OU, is it just Nick Brooks? We're done to OL. Then I guess try for a late flip. Yeah, Texas is looking for 5 or 6 in the class. 6 if it fell perfectly. Now it hasn't fallen perfectly. If Texas wins out for Nick Brooks on Friday, they're done in 2025 unless a Fasusi calls them in November and say, hey, man, sorry, I'm reconsidering here. So it would take something like that. But Texas is in a good position for some 2026 guys early on. Some of those guys play the same position. So you're not going to get them all. I know everybody would like to get them all, including Georgia and Alabama fans, but it doesn't happen. But Texas will be back on Commit Watch Friday and Saturday. It could be a good weekend for the Horns.
All right, CJ, what are your thoughts about the announcement for Susie going to Oklahoma? And what is about the narrative that Longhorn fans are dissatisfied with the momentum in recruiting right now for Texas? Is that a concern? Is that something that Longhorn fans should be anxious about? I think they expected more momentum. I don't know if it's any different than it has been in recent years for Texas recruiting-wise. For me, and like I said, I'm more of an outsider here, it feels like that Texas had just more success than they have had in recent years under Sark. And the expectations now are higher that they were going to benefit from that success and have a bump in recruiting and more momentum. And you've had the same amount that you've had. Am I off in my theory there, CJ?
No, I think that's accurate, right? Texas goes to the college football playoff, and I think as a result, it's kind of that blind faith that recruiting will follow, right? You finally have seen the trajectory reach where you expected it to go, right? For 5-7 to 8-5, and then 12-2 with the Big 12 title and a playoff berth. You expected to reap those rewards, and Texas still can. I mean, let's not discount this entire class because of one commit headed elsewhere. I mean, I went through it earlier, Rod, and maybe it's because it's a 5-star tackle from the state of Texas. That certainly plays a role in why this one might weigh a little heavier than others. But I went through it earlier today. In the top 20 recruits from the 2025 and 2024 classes, I mean, Texas only has 7 of those top 40 guys collectively. And where else have you seen these guys go? Well, that top 20 and the guys in ranked that high, they're going everywhere. Before then, 2023, it was Oklahoma, it was Texas A&M, accounting for 70% of that top 20. Well, right now they're sitting right below 40. So, it's no longer these kids wanting to stay close to home. Obviously, NIL's changing a lot of their perception of proximity and whatnot. You're seeing it with a number of kids committing to Ohio State, USC's on the table, Arkansas, Clemson, LSU. A lot of folks are inside the state of Texas right now for these top end recruits, and it's much more difficult in my eyes than what it was previously before the world of NIL. Of course, getting your parents out the game, now you have the means to do so. And so I think it's a little challenging. But on the same thing, right, does Texas end up getting to where they want to be in the recruiting class? And I still think so, right? We look back just a cycle ago. At this point, you didn't have a Colin Simmons in the class. You didn't have a Ryan Wingo, and you didn't have a Brandon Baker. And, Jerry and I have talked about it for weeks, if not months, right? What's ahead of the Longhorns right now? Well, they're still in great position for Jamie French. We'll see what Nick Brooks does this weekend, as well as a number of other big-time names, including Jonah Williams and Michael Terry, who Texas is continually moving in on as well. So it's not a toss it up and throw it away type of class. Not at all. It still has a chance, as we talked about this morning on the state of the program, to be a top 5 class. The path is there. Now it's all about going out, winning, and putting the stamp on some of these final recruitments, commitments, whatever you want to call them. And, of course, working back late and flipping, as Texas has done so great in the last few cycles. I still have a lot of hope for this class, 100%.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that as well. So, look, I would say this in recruiting nowadays is there have been so many kids that have moved into Texas, right, from out of state, Atlanta area from out of state. Kirby Smart had won 2 national championships in a row, signed 3 of the top 10 prospects in the state last year. The days of dominating states are over.
Yeah,
Kirby may get 5 or 6 this year, and that would be the most he's had. Okay, out of the state of Georgia. And where's his competition? It's not from in-state. It's not Georgia Tech. Not on guys they really want. It's Clemson or it's Alabama or maybe a Tennessee on a couple of guys. But these kids like Michael Fasusi, he didn't grow up with an A&M or Texas jersey on. He has no allegiance to a school. His family has no allegiance to a school. There's been a lot of kids move in to this state that didn't grow up A&M Texas. They didn't grow up with those jerseys. I'll say this. one of the reasons I'm glad the rivalry's back, and both those teams have to hold up their end of the bargain. I think it's helped out-of-state schools in recruiting. What A&M had planned, moving to the SEC, definitely opened up the state. But again, these kids, there's so many kids playing football in this state now that didn't really grow up in this state. Their families didn't grow up in this state. So it's different times. Same thing in Florida, same thing in Georgia, especially in that Atlanta area. So I think that's the reality of it. You're not going to get everybody. I judge a class on this is, if you get 3 top 10 in your state, you've done really well. If you get 4, you've had a hell of a class from in-state, because you have real national recruitments and real competition for these guys. The other thing I look at, though, is at the end of the day, I mean, just from the class rankings, if you want to play at the class rankings perspective, if you're into that, if game, if Texas gets Nick Brooks and then they get Jonah Williams, they're sitting about 7 or 8 in the class rankings. If they get Jamie French on the 30th, they're sitting about 5 or 6 in the class rankings. If they get Michael Terry in September, you're suddenly sitting there at 4 or 5. Now, Texas is going to sign another top 5 level class, whether it's ranked 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. That comes down to sometimes one player in a rankings in a point somewhere. Are you filling your needs? That's the big thing. Sark's going to sign a really good class. Are you filling your needs? They have work to do on D-line and in the secondary right now. Just remember this about Sark and the way they recruit. They don't really. You want to get everybody. They realize you're not going to get everybody. It's where do they sign in December? I mean, Xavier Filsaime and Wardell Mack were committed to Florida this time last year. I mean, so things are going to happen for Texas as long as they take care of their business on the field, which is most important. But recruiting's changed. You're not, if you think you're getting everybody, man, just go look. If you think you are, just go look at the state of Georgia rankings. And Kirby Smart's played for 1-2 national titles, played for a third, been in the playoff how many times? They averaged 3.5 top 10 guys a year out of that state in the last few years.
That's amazing. That's a great nugget. And it makes me wonder, guys, was Mac the last one to kind of the head coach of a major program to kind of sit on the Iron Throne and dominate a state? I would love to kind of see those numbers and see how many of you brought up, CJ, the top 20 players. And, Mac used to kind of dominate that at times, right? Get 7, 8 of the top 20 players in the state. Now, I wonder what was the last school and when was the last?
The last time had to have been Herman's 2018 class, right, Jerry? I mean,
from a Texas perspective, yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Just headlined by the defensive backs in that class. You had Avante Woodard, Brennan Eagles, 2 of the top receivers in that class. That was probably the best class Texas has had since Mac, right? Those Charlie and Herman years. It dominated the state of Texas, of course, but in terms of racking up multiple years in a row, it's been pretty hot and cold. I'll
bring this one up. Sorry, CJ. I was bringing this up. The last team that signed a lot of like top 10, top 12 type players in a class in the state of Texas was A&M in 2022. How's that?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Great point. Yeah.
Evan Stewart, not there. Connor Wiegman, injured. Hope he's healthy. Chris Marshall, not there. Denver Harris, not there. PJ Williams, not there. Malik Silla, barely there. Bryce Anderson's the best player of that group. That was 7 of the top 11 in the state.
Wow. Yeah.
That class, Matt got it. They're all gone, man.
Man, that's I forgot all about that. You're right. We forgot about it because they all left, but the Aggies did, man. They did a great job closing in on that class. All right, a good conversation here. All right, guys. Before we get to your questions, we know you guys got some questions. We're gonna try to answer those. We also got this ESPN mock draft that I want to get to a little bit here too. But first, let me thank our friends Andy Ludicky and his team for sponsoring our live stream here tonight on Texas football. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like me that has their hands in multiple businesses. Well, Andy Ludicky and his team can help you diversify by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and financial goals. If you're stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over your financial destiny and the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy today and he will take you through a process that will help you find businesses that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy today or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Give him a call right there, 404-973-9901. Thank you very much to Andy Luedeke for sponsoring our live stream and also being a part of the On Texas Football family. All right, gentlemen, before we get to some of these questions, I want to get you guys' thoughts about this mock draft that came out via ESPN. It's Field Yates, who does a great job, one of the draft analysts for ESPN. So he put out a way too early 2025 mock draft. And obviously, Longhorn fans want to know where the Longhorns are. 3 Longhorns, just a first round mock draft. 3 Longhorns projected in the first round. Kelvin Banks, how about this? They got him being mocked at 3rd overall to the Denver Broncos. 3rd overall. Where was Mike Williams drafted? Because it was pretty high. It was 2. It was 2nd. Okay. Well, that's
weren't him and Leonard like 2 back-to-back years?
I want to say you're right. Big Len was really high too. You're right about that, Jerry. Yep. I know Mike Williams was really high because I don't know if we've had a guy, but I believe you're right about Leonard Davis. He was gargantuan. Yeah. So they got Kelvin Banks, like mocked at 3rd overall in this mock draft. And yeah, Leonard Davis was picked 2.
Yeah.
Yep. Overall. Crazy. Getting back to it. Oh, by the way, Carson Beck is number 1, and they have James Pierce, the edge rusher from Tennessee, at number 2 to the Carolina Panthers. The number 1 overall pick, they have the Giants via trade getting Carson Beck out of Georgia. But Kelvin Banks at number 3. The other Longhorn is Quinn Ewers. They have Quinn Ewers at number 8 overall, going in the top 10. They got him going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Ooh, that's a pretty sweet spot. I like that. And the other Longhorn in the first round they have here is Isaiah Bond. They got Isaiah Bond going 28th overall to the Philadelphia Eagles. Also would be a pretty damn good spot. But all right, first of all, get your thoughts about where the Longhorns are. But another topic to keep in mind is I counted the amount of the opponents that the amount of first round mocked opponents that Texas will face next season. And guys, I got 5 in the top 10, I believe, and you got 10 overall in this first round mock draft. Also something to ponder. That's a little bit different than schedules pass.
Let's start with this. If Quinn and Kelvin Banks both went in the top 10 this year in the draft come April, Texas is probably in the playoff again.
I agree.
That means Quinn had a hell of a year.
Yep. And
that means Kelvin Banks was healthy all year, and followed through and was an All-American as the blindside protector of Quinn. So if those 2 things were to happen, Texas is probably a playoff team again. Something catastrophic with injuries would have to happen for them not to be. A lot of thoughts on this. My first thought is we ought to screenshot this, somehow keep this, and look back on it come April. Because everybody talks about recruiting rankings and players that don't pan out. Watch how much mock drafts change from now to April, Rod. 50% of the players change in the first round. Because Byron Murphy wasn't there. Tavondre Sweat wasn't there last year. That's why I think Cam Williams may end up being a guy that's a first, second rounder after this season if he plays up to expectations. But, if you look at it, if you're an offensive lineman at Texas and you have a chance to enter the draft this year, you're playing against some tremendous players. I mean, I think Deone Walker will be a top 10 pick potential. He's not even in here. He's in the first round. But
yeah, he's in the first round.
I mean, Texas is
top 20.
Both Michigan D linemen, Deone Walker from Kentucky, Scourton, you see that, Mikael Williams at Georgia. I mean, this list, if you're an offensive lineman at Texas, and that doesn't even count, this is just the first round guys. Think about Shamar Turner. Think about the other 2 guys at Georgia who are mid-round picks. Texas offensive line is going to be tested like I don't think a Texas offensive line's been tested before, with just in terms of sheer NFL guys they're going against on a defensive front all season long.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, to your point, Jerry, if you're looking to enter the draft as an offensive lineman, which theoretically all 5 of them could this year, right? Let's keep in mind the numbers there. I guess that's a future conversation for the 2025 season. But these guys, you have to be thinking of it as a tremendous contract year opportunity, especially for that junior class of Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, and DJ Campbell to go out there and showcase what you can do against some of the best upperclassmen and defensive linemen in the entire country. Great opportunity for those guys to go out there and earn themselves some NFL money because the opportunity is going to be there. NFL teams will never not need a talented offensive lineman or a right tackle or a left tackle. That's for sure.
Yeah, I remember that first year for Kelvin Banks, his freshman year, when he faced those 4 first-round pass rushers. I think it was like Will Anderson, Will McDonald was another, Felix. Yeah, exactly. Had a bunch of those guys. You're right, though, Jerry. I mean, you're going to face – I'll just go through it just here really quickly. You're going to end up facing those 2 D tackles, of course. So you got Mason Graham, who's considered right now on this in this mock draft. He is 7th overall. But then you'll face the cornerback, Will Johnson. They got him going 6th overall from Michigan. By the way, they got Mikael Williams, the edge rusher, D lineman from Georgia, going 5th overall. To your boy Jerry about the trenches. And you'll also end up facing Nick Scourge, and they got him going 9th overall, the edge rusher from the Texas A&M Aggies. And then you got Deion Walker, as you talked about. They got him going 20th overall. You'll face Malachi Starks, one of the best safeties, probably the top safety off the board. They got him going 14th overall. So just the tight end from Michigan is considered the best tight end coming out, and he's going 18th overall to the Chargers. Man, they got the Chargers stocking up on some tight ends. But it just, I'm with you. It just seems like the line play is definitely something that Texas will have to. They got to rise to the occasion. Not that they don't have the bodies, they got the guys, but it's something they haven't seen in this consistently on the schedule. You saw it with Bama, and they see it with Oklahoma, but they're going to see it they're going to see it probably 5 to 6 times on this schedule, as opposed to the 1 or 2 times they had in previous years.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I look at with this mock draft is, this is a big one for Isaiah Bond, and I'm not saying he's to be a first rounder. I think he'd have to have a really strong year to be a first round pick. But even if he's a second rounder, one of the things we were hitting on Coffee and Football this morning, CJ and Rod, is we look at high school recruiting and impacts of NFL draft. But Sark's getting to the point where if Isaiah Bond comes in, has a productive year, and let's just say goes in the second round, that'd be 2 straight receivers that transferred from Georgia and Alabama to Texas that ended up going in the second round of the NFL draft.
That got developed. Yep.
The portal recruiting from the draft is just as important as the high school recruiting and the draft nowadays. So something to keep in mind, I think we don't touch on enough, is that Texas is now getting enough talent out of the portal where I think this class of this group of guys that just came in out of the portal, I think there'll be multiple players drafted. And there may be one high and a couple of guys in the lower rounds, but Texas may have 2 or 3 guys from this portal class drafted come April. That's a pretty good sweet spot to be in. I mean, look what happened with FSU.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, and a real good sales pitch, too, for other guys coming in the portal. That's why Isaiah Bond, remember originally why he said he was coming was because of his brand and his draft stock, and he wanted to solidify himself as a first-round pick.
So, CJ Rudd, if A.D. Mitchell had come to Texas and had 30 catches for 400 yards and gone to the 6th round, you think Isaiah Bond would be here?
It's a great point.
Nope. You're right. And then there'll be another one after Isaiah Bond who also sees that route, that path to the NFL, and they'll want to take it. No, I'm with you, especially when you can play with some of the top quarterbacks in college football, which Sark also continues to stockpile in that room. Any other thoughts, guys, on this mock draft? But, I mean, they have the Longhorns well represented. I agree with you. If you're having 3 first-round picks, especially 2 in the top 10, I'm going to say not only did you make it to the playoff, Jerry, I'm going to say you made a run in the college football playoff, whatever that means. I'm not sure what that – I'm going to say you made a run in the college football playoff. So that's – okay.
You know what's bad for this mock draft? For Ryan Day. Because Ohio State fans are looking at us saying, all right, dude, you've been on third base for how many years? Are you ever going to get home? There's like 6 or 7 Ohio State guys on this. You ever going to
Always
get
is.
man? Do we have to have a wild pitch for you to get home? You started on third base, man. Do we need Randy Johnson to throw one in the stands for you to get home? That's the first rounder potentially on this team this year.
Yeah.
Just that are draft eligible because Caleb Downs will be a top 10 pick too.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Especially with Harbaugh gone, man. He's got to win that game. I don't know if there's more pressure on any coach in the country to win a game than it is on Ryan Day to win that game, especially this year. All right, good stuff. We'll get to the Senior Bowl list here in a second, too, because Senior Bowl released their watch list. And we'll kind of get into how many players for the Longhorns we think will end up getting drafted off of that Senior Bowl watch list. But first, let's thank another one of our fantastic sponsors, our good friends over at Autograph and the Autograph app. This segment is brought to you by Autograph, the app that curates the best content, tickets, and gear to help you fan to your full potential. Being a fan is a full-time job, ladies and gentlemen, so Autograph does the heavy lifting for you. From tickets for big matchups to breaking news, the Autograph app has curated content for fans of all things Texas, all the podcasts, articles, and game predictions you could ever want, including the On Texas football shows and content. So we're a part of that family. The new replay feature lets you get the day's news without the noise for when you need it, when you want it to start your day. Use the code ON Texas. You see it right there. Use the code ON Texas to download the app for free on Google Play or the Apple App Store today. Feed your fandom with the Autograph app. Remember, use the code ON Texas. Appreciate our good friends at the Autograph app for sponsoring our live stream tonight. All right, let's get to some of the questions, guys, and then we'll get back to some of the topics that I want to hit. UT Boy, first and foremost, appreciate the love. UT Boy says, family members, hook 'em. Yeah, man, it's almost time. Happy VY Day to everybody out there. VY Days until Texas kicks off against Colorado State. So I want to start talking about opponents and matchups and schemes, and I can't wait for game week. It's going to be awesome. Make sure you guys
can I ask you a question since you brought up VY?
Yes, sir.
You came out of Houston. You were a top national prospect that signed with Texas. When did you learn about VY, and was he even a lot better than the hype for you? Because we talk about it for Bobby seeing him, me seeing him, but I've never asked you about that since we are VY days away.
Yeah, VY was back then. It was 17-5A. And we were in the same district with Madison at the time. So there were stories coming out about VY. And honestly, it was more about him as kind of a basketball guy. I remember that. Right. Kind of some freaky, long basketball dude. But when he started playing football, we started hearing about him it was probably his maybe his sophomore year. The buzz started growing about him. And yeah, man, he was, that the hype was real. Like it was, and everybody in H-Town, they knew it. They knew that. And that was we had a rival. Bear Lair was the rival, but man, Bear Lair wasn't our rival.
They're a baseball school.
Yeah, we whipped them every year, and nothing against Bear Lair, but they just weren't on our level. Houston Lamar, we're on a different level than them. But Madison could go. And matter of fact, I believe Coach Seals, who used to be the coach at Madison back in my day, and Coach Tom Nolan, who was at Houston Lamar forever, they were like the two longest tenured coaches in HISD by the time they both end up retiring. But because they were really good, and Madison was always a juggernaut. I remember going back and watching some of them games when VY was starting and thinking to myself, I'm glad that he wasn't playing against me and our defense. And we had some ballers, man. We had Teron Woolridge signed at A&M. Jerome Sapp, as you know, was a USA Today All-American. He was like top 3 best safeties in the country. And I was on that defense. We had some guys, but man, VY can make you look silly, as he did against USC and as he did against it was Katy in the playoffs. If they did that too.
Yes.
Did he go through North Shore and Katy?
He beat North Shore. Now, the funny thing about the North Shore game is, if I'm thinking about the right year, they had 4th and 17, and Vince was sitting back at free safety. And I'll never forget this. North Shore ran sprint draw. And I was like, 4th and 17, draw? But that was their go-to play. So they went with it, and needless to say, they didn't get it.
Didn't get it. Yeah, I know. He was a force, man. No doubt. It wasn't just at Texas. It happened the same way at when we heard the buzz down in H-Town, and then once he became the VY that we all know. and he never lost the swagger, man. He had that swagger from the day I met VY, and I think I met him in high school, like in H-Town. I don't even remember where. I was out. He wasn't supposed to be there. It was somewhere where I was at. He wasn't supposed to be there because I was a little older than VY, and I was like, "Hey, what you doing up in here?" But VY had that kind of pull in H-Town. So yeah, no, it was. And I remember when he came here, people were. And listen, I did deal with him. We deal with him on the scout team. So trust me, we knew, man. Our defense, we were loaded, and VY on the scout team was, oh man, he was a pain in the you know what to deal with, because he would test. I mean, all your pursuit drills and the scramble drill with this dude and open field tackling. Oh man, they let you hit the scout team guys. They didn't really care. It's like, nah, you can tackle him if you want to. They still couldn't tackle that dude. That dude was a problem on scout team. I remember that.
I don't know if our producer Matt can bring it up, but there was a Matt in Austin at the Texas facility today while we're talking about VY days away. So I don't know if producer Matt can bring up Matt Leinert's tweet from the day. He was in Austin. Him and Sark were teaching. Him and Sark were teaching Jaden Blue the bush push today, I'm sure.
Yeah. See, I think I saw that picture. Right, he took a little shot. Yeah. You know what? I'm glad there. You go. Boom. Hanging out with Quinn. All right, there you go. I'm glad Matt Leinart has buried the hatchet, if you will.
You knew he had to stand in front of that poster and that background instead of what else is in that room, right? Which I'm sure is a Vince Young.
What is he just doing, a peace sign, or is that a hand sign? What is that?
He's doing the Trojans, man.
Oh, I didn't even know the Trojans had a hand sign. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
Right on, Rob. Come on.
I didn't know they had one. I don't even know how to. There you go. I didn't know that was a thing. There you go. All right.
He's still fighting on. He's fighting on. He's waiting for that defense to tackle anybody this year. Tackle somebody, anybody, fight on.
All right. Yeah. All right. So thank you guys. UT boy. Thank you, Vincent Paul Young. We appreciate that. Yeah. VY days until Texas kicks off against Colorado State. How about this one? Let's get to Marty. Marty, you didn't have a question, but thank you for the super chat. If you got something that you want to ask, comment, throw it out there. We'll show you some love for you because you're showing us some. So we appreciate that. Cameron, let's get to Cameron Miller's question here. Do you think the amount of portal players top teams take is going to increase? Look at the nice group Oregon took in the portal for this year's team. Portal activity has increased every year, basically. I mean, it's that we do know. What are your thoughts? But it has increased every year, and I think that'll continue to be the case.
Yeah, I think it will. This certainly coincides with the roster scholarship limits increasing from 85 to 105. And Sarkisian spoke about that earlier this week, as well as, we're still kind of figuring out what our approach is going to be inside the building. Do we take larger high school classes? He basically hinted at yes. You'll see some of those classes, kind of the floor there being 25, going up to 30, maybe 33 if necessary. But more so than that, you're going to be looking at it in the sense that you're going to have more spots available, especially early on when this is first implemented, to go out there and add college bodies right away. And why would you not, right? You're getting guys that are a bit more excelled down the line of what their development and college readiness is when this first comes into effect. And of course, after that, then you'll have to start preparing for the year in and year out increase and decrease of bodies on your roster. But I absolutely think that you'll start to see more and more takes out of the portal, as well as some of those developmental pieces out of the high school ranks to kind of offset that 20 scholarship increase for the scholarship limit. Jerry, you got anything there?
I do, but here's the thing. Look, we always look at the success stories, right? And there's been a lot of schools that have tried it and it hasn't gone as well, right? But the key early on in the portal was getting in on guys early and getting them to campus before other schools got in on those same players. Florida State was the first really successful program. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Ole Miss this year. A lot of colleges are going to be watching Ole Miss this year saying, okay, hold on. Because they clearly went all in on portal over high school to try to make this first 12-team playoff. Because they had a third-year starting quarterback back. They had a lot of other key pieces. They lost Quinshon Judkins, but look, they had their top two receivers back, tight end. They added Juice Wells out of the portal. They added offensive linemen, defensive front guys out of the portal.
A lot of changes.
Yeah, so Ole Miss is going to be a really good test run for people in the future after what Florida State did. Because Florida State had 10 guys drafted, 9 were transfers. That's amazing number. That's amazing evaluation out of the portal and development of those guys, because those are multiple-year players in some cases. So I think Ole Miss is going to be this year's test run for that, to see how many guys these programs start to take. But here's the tough thing. If you're a blue blood, if you're a Georgia, a Texas, and Alabama, an Ohio State, is you have no issues. If you want to, you have no issues getting 25 quality high school prospects in a class. If you want to go that big, if you're the next tier that aren't the blue bloods, sometimes you're forced to go to the portal more. Yeah. And so the portal can be your way into the playoff, knowing the blue bloods are still going to accumulate more high school players and fill in the gaps with portal players. So I think there's different ways to look at it depending on where you're coaching and where your program is. But this year, my eyes are on Ole Miss. I think a lot of people's eyes are going to be on Ole Miss to see if they maximize this portal class. Because if they maximize it and they get into the playoff and they go 10-2 with a lot of those portal guys being keys, then I think you're going to see that Rod, everything's a copycat league, right? Yeah, NFL stuff. This is all copycat stuff.
Yep. If it works, there'll be other schools that'll try it and they'll do it quickly. No, I agree with you. That's a good point about Ole Miss, though. And I like Ole Miss this year, and Texas didn't have to play them. Even better. All right, getting back to these questions here. Marty, thank you, Marty, for the super chat. Got another one. Thank you. We appreciate that. Says Rod B, what does an All-American season look like for Manny Muhammad? That is a great question.
Great question. Because
the All-American, it doesn't always have to be just prolific stats. I mean, I went and looked at. Let's go look at Kool-Aid McKinstry was an All-American last year, right? I believe he was one of the All-American corners. He had only one actually in 2023 he had 0 interceptions, but he had 7 pass deflections. In 2022 he had 15 pass deflections and he had 1 interception. I went and looked at Cooper DeJean. He is the corner from Iowa. That I think he was an All-American as well. In 2023, he had 2 interceptions. 5 the year before that, he had 5 pass deflections, and 8 the year before that. A lot of it is big plays in big games. Now you got to be consistent all year long, but you got to make those big plays in those big games. Those guys, most of those big plays came in big games for those guys. So I think like Will Johnson is not that prolific either. And Will Johnson will be the first corner. He would have been the first corner drafted last year if he left, but the corner from Michigan, he will be the first corner drafted in his upcoming draft. And he had 4 interceptions. That's pretty good. And 4 pass deflections last year. And he's a guy that's an All-American type corner. So Manny can get those numbers. What Manny's got to do is got to be in big games. And Texas got enough of those. You play Michigan. You play Georgia. All right, you play A&M. That's a big game. Texas OU is always big.
Yep.
So you got big games. I think if he's consistent, and by the way, he's already getting some love because Nick Saban brought him up. Maybe Nick Saban said I'm worried about the corner opposite Malik Muhammad. I'm right, that guy. All right. By the way, I've been that guy. So that's a task because I was that other corner opposite Nathan Vasher, opposite Quentin Jammer. Top 10 pick. The other guys, the all-time leader in interception, you don't throw at those guys, you throw at the other guys. So big year for whoever that other corner is, which is why they might be thinking about throwing Janae Barron out there and putting Gilboa at the nickel, just in case some teams decide, you know what, that's the liability. We're going at that other corner. So I think from Malik, as long as he has those big plays in the big games.
Yeah.
Those 3 interceptions come in the biggest games, Jerry, he'll get enough respect among SEC coaches and other coaches where they'll go, hey, that guy is legit. And by the way, once you become a respected corner, you don't get a lot of action.
Yep. Right.
That's the whole point. Like, you're not going to get that many opportunities. That's what Will Johnson and Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry stayed away from those guys.
Rod, to your point, Gavin Holmes is going to be the one getting the most action this year.
Yes, he is. He's got a chance to be an all-conference player potentially because he's going to get a lot of action.
Yeah, that volume will be there. I'm going to be interested when Texas does throw out a Manny Muhammad and a Jade look at both outside cornerbacks. What's the approach from opposing offenses? Who do they target? Because, Rod, you talked about the important moments and standing up big to be a part of that conversation. Well, for Jahdae Barron a year ago, right, what were his biggest moments? It was the interception against Alabama. And then, of course, he had the 4th down stop against Houston to seal the deal, in which I believe Dana Holgorsen even said afterward, yeah, we were going for 2 in the win. So if we would have punched that drive into the end zone, Texas probably doesn't make it, barring what happens on that 2-point that 2-point attempt at the end of the touchdown there. But Texas maybe doesn't make it to the Big 12 championship. They probably don't make it to the college football playoff, but because Jahdae was in the right, vicinity, kind of creating a tighter window than what you thought, even after the, the shift motion that got, some separation there. That's where you then get that recognition. You can then start piling up your portfolio of big time plays for when it comes for the Thorpe Award, voters and some of these, propagandists, and Texas does a great job of hyping up their players. When it comes to that, and you have that highlight reel that instead of being 45 seconds to a minute is now 2.5 to 3 minutes long, you can say, look, that was the game-winning play. We don't beat Houston without Jahdae Barron right there. Oh, look, he turned the tide and set the tone against Alabama, in which they couldn't get their offense rolling in the first half, and Texas took a big lead into the second half. That's where you start to see that turn in a little bit. So whenever they do have Barron and Muhammad out wide, I wonder where opposing teams look to attack. I think that's going to be interesting.
Safeties and the linebackers is where I would look to. If I saw those 2 corners out there, I try to test the safeties and the linebackers. But it's a good point, though, you made about the year before oftentimes will help you make your All-American case. That's why I read the stats from the year before, because there are times where these guys get overlooked, but they are starting to develop a reputation, Jerry. And I think, oftentimes it's a consistency award or accolade. It's like for the last couple of years, this guy's been, one of the better players in the country. So I think Malik Muhammad's definitely got that kind of ceiling, no doubt. Thank you, Marty, for the super chat. We appreciate it. Let's get to another question here. How about this one from David Keith Williams? Always love David's input. He said, Jerry and TJ, I've asked this question to various insiders, wondering if there's a consensus, which do you think is the better recruit or long-term football player, Nick Townsend or Michael Terry? I've watched both of these guys. That's a great question.
Great question. I lean a little bit to Townsend just because Townsend is a willing defensive player that actually likes the idea of playing defense as much as offense. So he's got 2 chances to be successful and maximize it. I mean, he could play rush outside backer, and he could play tight end. He's got 2 legitimate chances. Michael Terry prefers to be an offensive player. He wants to start his career at wide receiver. His development could take a little longer if wide receiver is not where he ends up. Then he's got to develop at another position. Nick Townsend, I mean, he kind of was like, this is who I am. I'll play either side of the ball. I don't care. I just want to go hit people and score touchdowns. And so I just Nick Townsend to me, guys, is, I mean, there's a physicality with him that you're kind of like, you're taken aback on both sides of the ball.
That's where I was going to point to as well, Jerry. It's just that willingness to go hit. We've talked about it in the past with maybe a Jatavian Sanders or some of those surefire tight ends where what they can do in the passing game, right? Amari Niblack falls in that conversation as well. They're huge threats and they're big weapons in an offense like Sarkisian's. The question is, what kind of impact can they make in the running game or when they're asked to sit back in and pass protect? Because that's a big part of the tight end's responsibility in this offense as well. When you watch the tape with Nick Townsend, if it doesn't work out on the offense side of the ball, which, again, because he's a willing contact guy and he's willing to go hit guys bigger than him, well, we know what he can do on the defensive side of the ball in the edge spot. And he even mentioned to me after his pool visit for the pool bash is, Coach Banks wasn't here, so a few of those coaches had their best foot forward to try to recruit me over to their position room whenever I get here as well. They're trying to, plant some seeds there, so whenever he does arrive in campus later on, maybe, he switches up his mind of what he wants to play. But that does give you an idea of how Texas views him as a prospect to say, we'll start you at tight end now, but hey, we've seen the tape. We know what you can do. That physicality is not going to disappear anytime soon. You might have a future on the defensive side of the ball. We'll leave it at that.
Good stuff, guys. All right, before we get back to some of the questions and topics here, let's thank our good friends at Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is focused on creating officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs, folks. And right now is a great time for you with the college football season starting up to take advantage of their great kickoff campaign. There you go, right there, Home Field Apparel. Use the code Texas24 for 15% off. And right now they have a great deal happening with their football boxes, coaches jackets, bomber jackets. It contains 3 never before seen items, unavailable anywhere else. Only place you can get them is at Home Field Apparel. Platinum Box VIPs will also receive additional exclusive items, including a new hat or a ringer for Platinum VIPs only. The 2024 Platinum Pass, guaranteeing 20% off and early access also to your school's football releases throughout the 2024 season. And also you can go check this out at homefieldapparel.com. And right now, highly limited edition items here at Home Field Apparel. So go check it out, that Platinum Box VIPs. That's homefieldapparel.com. Use the code Texas24 for 15% off. The convenience of online shopping has never been better, thanks to our friends at homefieldapparel.com. All right. Thank you very much for sponsoring our live stream. I want to get back to a couple of the questions here, guys. How about this one from Hi, I'm Boo Corrigan. Says, hi, Jerry. With Fasusi to Oklahoma, is it just Nick Brooks and we're done at O-line? Then I guess try for a late flip?
Yeah, I think if Nick Brooks commits to Texas over Georgia and USC Friday, I think Texas is done, barring a phone call from Michael Fasusi in November, because the 2026 class in Texas there's not a down year on the offensive line in Texas anymore at this point. There may be a couple of positions where it kind of ebbs and flows. Offensive line isn't one of those. Next year's offensive line class, I mean, I saw John Turntine and Toa Katoa last week. They're both studs. It baffles me Katoa's national ranking, but I'm sure people will catch up eventually. Nicholas Robertson at Klein is, I think, a really good guard prospect. So that class is building inside the state line, then outside and nationally as well for Texas in 26. So they're not going to take a 6th offensive lineman unless it's a elite guy. So if Nick Brooks commits Friday, they're done, barring a phone call they don't expect.
Since we're talking recruiting, might as well stay there. Trade day. Hey, Jerry, any chance that Texas circled back on Lamont Rogers?
It's a good question. Now, if Lamont Rogers called, you'd have to entertain it because his upside at offensive tackles as high as anybody's. I'm not saying he's going to be drafted ahead of Fasusi or Fasusi going to be drafted. These guys have to go maximize their talent and get it done and stay healthy. Lamont Rogers has a hell of a lot of upside. If he made a phone call in October, November, I think Texas would take the phone call. I don't think they would say, sorry, bud, we're full. I think they'd entertain that one as well. It's going to take a prospect that level to really, if they're going to take 6.
Yeah. I mean, that athleticism at that size, tough to pass up.
Kabir wants to know, why are we missing on our 1A guys? The top guys on the board, I'm assuming, is what he's referring to.
Well, you're not going to get them all, but I'm more – look, maybe it's because I've done this so long, but I'm waiting until December. I mean, you're not going to get all these guys, but what if Texas gets – and what is a 1A guy? That's maybe defined differently by different people, but what if Jonah Williams and Jamie French are committed to Texas by the time the first ball's kicked? What if Michael Terry ends up in the Texas class as well? I mean, suddenly you've hit on over 50% of those type of players in the class, or at least 50% in the class. So I can tend to wait to see where this thing heads, because we talked about it earlier. In the last class, Colin Simmons committed August 8th. But at this point in time, Brandon Baker, no decision. Ryan Wingo, no decision. Kobe Black, no decision. Phil Sami wasn't an offer. He ended up being – he was pretty much a 1A guy for Texas once they said they were going to offer him, because he was a 1A guy for a lot of other people. So to me, you just kind of wait to see how it all plays out, because Sark is not – they're not just going to walk away from some of those guys. They'll continue to recruit them. And I'll say this. I'll throw a prediction out there.
Oh.
if Texas, let's just say as a 1-loss or 0-loss team, when Georgia comes to town, watch that visitor list who you can get on campus for that game.
Yeah, it's already looking pretty good right now. So I'm assuming by the time mid-season comes rolling around, if this game is as anticipated, with both teams being a top 5 potential matchup, it's going to be pretty long. Also, just to add on this, it does feel like we kind of do this song and dance each cycle now, especially over the last 3 or so. You didn't have Anthony Hill's first commitment. You had to pry open a Colin Simmons from LSU. Again, Ryan Wingo, going out of state to get CJ Baxter. The list goes on. And, of course, you have the late fines, right? Kobe Black, a late decision. Texas was always kind of in that hunt, but it took a while. To where he felt comfortable to make that decision. Aaron Butler, another one, in which kind of popped up very late. And now Texas is very pleased with what he's done. Anthony Smith, again, didn't get his first commitment, yet you were there till the very end. You came back, you swooped in, and you got a very talented class, a very talented piece, or a couple of pieces there. That's going to be the same case again this year in my eyes. And again, Texas over the next week or so, Jerry, and we've talked about it, Rod, plenty of opportunities to get into that top 10, primed for the start of the season moving forward, and then you'll start to see kind of the icing on the cake added now that they've got that foundation once the ball is kicked off.
I like that. Since we're talking recruiting, I want to make sure we get it. Oh, how about this one for you, CJ? You're already on it. David Rawls wants to know, besides Stewart, which 2026 D tackles will Texas pursue?
Yeah, this is one where you're certainly going to have to watch this year to see which bodies develop and where you'll start to see guys receive a lot of offers. The one close to home is out of Bastrop. That's Tiki Hola, who's been to campus probably 4 or 5 times since the January 20th junior day. Kenny Baker, I actually saw Kenny Baker down in Bastrop for that practice that he visited in the spring. He had the camcorder. He had his notepad out there. He was taking it all in when it came to Tiki Hola, who's very flexible, can move very well, big-time interior guy, probably a 3 tech at the next level as well. So you'll start to see some more of those names start filing in probably week 3, week 4 of this upcoming season for the junior class. Again, kind of tough to judge those early 2026 bodies at the defensive line position, especially when you start to consider did they lose bad weight from a year before? Do they gain good weight? It's one of those wait and sees.
I like the other.
I'll add this. I'll add this on Stewart. Look, he has Texas on the list, but I went by St. Aug earlier in the year. I'll say this one. It's got to be a very academic driven decision for him to get out of state. Frank, just look up Frank Wilson's record at St. Augustine. Hi. Just look that one up and realize that him, Corey Raymond, and Bo Davis are all working on the same team right now. But look at Frank's record at St. Aug at that high school.
Okay,
that's gonna be a tough one for anybody. And I'm not saying he can't commit to somebody else. That'll be a tough one long term.
All right. Last recruiting question from Ashley. Just from you, Jerry. How many silent commits?
I mean, not 11. This isn't 11. We're not 11 personnel.
Not 11. I like that. All right. Before we move on, we'll answer a few more questions here. But I want my man Jerry first to tell you about our good friends at Duck Camp. I'm representing Duck Camp. He's got the hat on. I got some more Duck Camp gear coming. I'm excited about Jerry. Tell the good folks about our friends at Duck Camp.
Yeah, look, I love Rod's hat, by the way. Duck Camp is gear made for the people that live in the moments. What are we all? We're living in the moments right now. Living the moments out there where there are fish to catch. That's UT Boy every morning, by the way. I think he just fell asleep on the live on the chat. Birds to hunt, time to kill, football to watch. They like doing all that stuff. So Duck Camp built a company centered on it, based in Austin, dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. Those of you out there that look forward to the opening day of hunting season and the kickoff of Longhorn football with the same fervor and excitement of a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. Who doesn't remember that? And Duck Camp is here to let you know that. From opening day to game day, Duck Camp's got you covered. At Duck Camp, they believe you can't just sit around and wait for the adventure to come to you. You have to get out there, stay out there, and make the most of every second. Here's the great seasons, y'all. Yes, hunting and football. Shop hunting gear at duckcamp.com. And we'll be wearing a duck camp all year. We have gear. CJ, I think we all have gear coming on the way from duck camp. Can't wait to sport it on the shows.
I gotta hope I get one of those hats in that goodie bag. I mean, come on, y'all are looking good. So
hey, I got some
my hat game, Rod. I know you got me beat almost every step of the way there.
Now, man, hey, I got some nice ones coming too, man. Just go check out that fall collection. It's pretty damn impressive. All right, thank you for that, Jerry. All right, before we get out of here, I want to get you guys' thoughts about the Senior Bowl watch list that came out, and the Senior Bowl does this annually. The list of the best draft eligible prospects, essentially, is that what we're talking about here? And the Longhorns and CJ, you put out a tweet that kind of listed some of the top programs in the SEC and how many players they had on this list before the Longhorns. They ended up with 16 players on the Senior Bowl watch list. Bert Auburn, Kelvin Banks, Jadae Barron, Silas Bowden, Isaiah Bond, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Hayden Connor, Quinn Ewers, David Benda, Gunnar Helm, Jermaine Lole, Jake Majors, Trey Moore, Andrew Makuba, Barron Sorrell are among the Longhorns who made the list. But 16 is not actually, based on your numbers, C-Dave, you put out there, compared to the other SEC teams, that's not the most. There are other teams with a lot more Senior Bowl, at least these on the list, that the guys on the watch list, than Texas would have at this moment.
Yeah, well, first off, Rod, that list that you listed that the Senior Bowl has for Texas, very top heavy of the alphabet in regards to those names there. A lot of B's there. As a Vogel myself, I mean, I'm always towards the end, but no, 16 for the Longhorns. That sounds great, right? To kind of continue that momentum of having the NFL draft success this past spring. You'd like to see double digits get drafted once again. It's certainly a possibility this year, but you're seeing a different animal of SEC talent, right? And the type of NFL guys that they're looking for at programs that you maybe wouldn't expect it, right? You look at Arkansas, 13 guys, Auburn, 15, Florida, who we've talked about is, will their coach remain employed? As many as Texas this year, who's starting top 5 in the country this year. It just speaks to the depth of NFL caliber players in this conference that Texas will have to play every year. And Jerry, to your point, look at Ole Miss down there with 21. How many of those 21, and I haven't looked through it, weren't on the roster a year ago or were added via the portal not too long ago? So that'll be interesting to me. One thing I did want to point out, Tennessee only with 9. I thought that was really low right there. I mean, Oklahoma only with 11, so not as many draft eligible picks on the roster this year that Senior Bowl kind of has their eye on as well. And this also doesn't include everybody that could go in the draft, right? I don't think they have juniors on this list as well. You don't have a Cam Williams, a DJ Campbell. That list for Texas could certainly grow, and it certainly could shrink. But right now, 16, you got to be pleased with that.
The crazy thing about the list that Senior Bowl, the Senior Bowl watch list has for Texas is Gavin Holmes wasn't on there. And there's been a couple NFL scouts that have come through practices this fall, Rod, and said he's the most improved player on the Texas defense, and he's now on their evaluation list. So Texas may get a 17. Now, the other thing we want to point out, there's like 850 guys on this list. That list will get whittled down quite a bit throughout the season. So these guys start with 1,000, chop it down then in the 800s, then they'll continue to chop that list down. But I'm going to go through that Ole Miss list too at some point. I may not have time tonight to see how many of those guys are transfers, period, that are on that list for them. I mean, Jackson Dart's technically a transfer. He transferred, same as Quinn. He transferred from USC. So how many of those guys are transfers for Ole Miss? The bigger, I'll tell you another one is how many of those guys are transfers, period, in the SEC on that list?
Yeah, that's a good question. You're right about that. I have the Aggies got 20 on this Senior Bowl watch.
And that's with the class that went up and spoke, but those guys really aren't eligible yet.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that, you start looking at some of the opponents that Texas is going to play, and you're right about it, CJ. Like, you wouldn't expect Arkansas to have 13. Hell, Vanderbilt's got 7. Hell, and Tennessee's got 9. I've never expected Vanderbilt to have that many guys who are on the Senior Bowl watch list. So Texas getting some love there with 16 guys on that Senior Bowl watch list. All right, one other question, then we'll end it here for tonight, getting out just a little bit early, because I think this Cisco question is interesting. Thoughts on Cam Williams being a one and done? How often do we see offensive linemen be one and dones?
Amarius Mims did it as I started 8 games at Georgia. He had some injuries. We had him at Future 50 when I was ESPN Under Armour way back in the day, and he was a no-brainer if he stayed healthy. He also had some really good players in front of him at Georgia, but he did it. I believe he had 8 starts and went in the first round in his career.
Okay,
definitely possible. I would say it's probable that Cam Williams elevates himself to at least a top 3 round pick. Well, again, we talked about at the beginning of the show. He gets to go against some really good guys, not only in practice, because Trey Moore and Colin Simmons are going to prepare him for what's to come this season, but then the schedule itself. So if he has a really good season, he has the measurables, he's going to check all the other boxes. If he has a really good season, it's not out of the question he's not a late first rounder. It has been done before.
I like that. All right, before we get out of here, let's thank Andy Ludicky one more time. If you're looking to diversify your portfolio, you may be someone like me who has their hands in multiple businesses. Well, Andy can help you diversify by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. If you're stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO, no control over your money and the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy and he will take you through a process to help you find businesses that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy today or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. You see the number right there, 404-973-9901. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky for sponsoring our live stream tonight on Texas Football. And thank you very much to Jerry for the time. Appreciate all the knowledge. Thank you, CJ, for all of the nuggets as well. Thank you guys for all your participation in the show tonight. Thank you for all the super chats as well. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He is the real MVP. And to all of our sponsors, Duck Camp, of course, we appreciate them. We also appreciate our friends at Autograph, the Autograph app, and Home Field Apparel as well. And, of course, Andy Ludicky. Until next time, remember tomorrow you'll have Coffee and Football starting up at 8. Also, tomorrow we will have the Winning Drive starting up at around 3:15 or so. CJ, myself, and Coach Bob Shipley. Until next time, for Matthew, for CJ, and for my man Jerry Hamilton, hook 'em horns.